The first thing Cleef noticed wasn't the fire. It was the silence around it. A wagon burned in the middle of the trail, bright, loud, impossible to miss. Yet the desert stayed quiet as a church after a funeral. No coyotes, no birds, not even wind. That kind of silence meant only one thing. Someone was still here, and they didn't want witnesses. Cleef eased his horse down the ridge, reins loose, eyes sharp. The flames snapped and curled around the wagon's frame, lighting the rocks in orange pulses. A wheel creaked as it slowly collapsed, like the whole scene was counting time. Then Cleef saw the sign that made his blood turn cold. A woman's boot stuck out from behind a boulder near the fire. Cleef slid off his horse and moved low, using the rocks. The boot didn't move. Neither did the shadow beside it. Cleef's hand hovered near his gun, but he didn't draw. Drawing too early was how men died. He crept closer. The shadow blinked. A woman's face rose from the darkness, dusty, bruised, alive. She pressed a finger to her lips. Shh! Moonlight caught her eyes. Dark, furious, and beautifully steady for someone who'd clearly crawled through hell. She was around 25 to 30, with long dark hair fallen loose and wild, and a face that looked like trouble had tried to break it and failed. Cleef didn't speak. He just lowered himself behind the boulder with her. Behind them, a branch snapped. Footsteps, slow, careful, moved near the burning wagon. A man's voice floated through the firelight. "Check the rocks," he said. "She can't be far." The woman's breathing tightened. She held something close to her chest, wrapped in cloth. Cleef leaned close, whispering so softly it barely existed. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head once. Her voice was a whisper with steel inside it. "I'm not hurt," she said. "I'm hunted." The footsteps came closer. Cleef shifted his weight. "Ready." The woman's eyes locked on his. "If you shoot, they'll bring more." Cleef's jaw tightened. "If I don't?" "They'll find me," she replied. A lantern swung past the boulder. Light spilled across the sand. Cleef caught the scent of kerosene and sweat. Then he saw a strip of cloth tied to the lantern handle, red as fresh blood. Cleef recognized it. The Red Ribbon Gang. Men who didn't just rob. They erased. The lantern moved on. The footsteps drifted away. For now. The woman finally exhaled. Cleef didn't relax. Not yet. "Name," he whispered. She hesitated, then answered like she'd learned names could be weapons. "Ruby." Cleef nodded once. "Why are they after you, Ruby?" Ruby tightened her grip on the cloth bundle. "Because I took something from them," she said. Cleef's eyes narrowed. "Money?" Ruby gave a dry, almost laugh. "Worse." She opened the bundle just enough for Cleef to see paper. Folded pages covered in names and numbers, ink thick and deliberate. A ledger. Proof. Cleef felt the air change. A ledger wasn't paper. It was a death sentence you could hand to the right man. Ruby watched his face. "Now, you understand." Cleef swallowed. "Whose names?" Ruby's eyes sharpened. "The sheriff, the judge, the stage line boss, and the man who owns this valley. Baron Hatcher." Cleef had heard of Hatcher. Everyone had. Hatcher wasn't just rich. He was the kind of rich that turned towns into puppets. Ruby's voice stayed low. "They burned my wagon to make it look like I died with it." Cleef glanced at the fire. "You were in that wagon?" "I was supposed to be," Ruby said. "But I jumped when the first shot hit the wheel." A distant whistle cut through the night. Sharp, specific. Ruby flinched. "That's their signal." Cleef's mind moved fast. "Where are you taking that ledger?" "Whisper Gulch," Ruby whispered. "There's a telegraph office. If I can get one message out to the Marshal in Redstone, Hatcher's empire cracks." Cleef stared at her. Why trust a telegraph? Ruby's mouth tightened. Because paper can be burned. Words on a wire can't be stopped fast enough. Another whistle sounded, closer. Cleef stood. Then we move. Ruby looked at him, suspicious. Why would you help me? Cleef's eyes stayed on the dark trail ahead. Because I've seen men like Hatcher turn good people into ash. Ruby studied him for a beat, then nodded once, like she didn't trust him, but trusted the direction he was facing. They slipped into the night, moving away from the burning wagon. Behind them, the Red Ribbon gang searched. Ahead of them, Whisper Gulch waited. They reached the outskirts of Whisper Gulch at dawn, gray light spilling over a town carved into rock and shadow. The gulch walls rose like a throat around it. Buildings leaned. Windows watched. Ruby pulled her hood low and kept close to Cleef. Everyone in this town works for Hatcher, she whispered. Cleef nodded. Then we act like we do too. They walked down the main street like they belonged there. Inside the saloon, men drank too early and smiled too little. At the far end, a piano played something slow and wrong. Cleef's gaze found the telegraph office across the street. Small, plain, guarded by a man pretending not to guard it. A deputy's badge glinted on his vest. Ruby's voice went thin. That's Sheriff Klein's man. Cleef murmured, Stay behind me. They crossed the street. The deputy stepped forward. Office is closed. Cleef smiled like he was harmless. We're delivering paperwork for Baron Hatcher. The deputy's eyes flicked to Ruby. Too long. Ruby's fingers tightened around the bundle. The deputy's hand drifted toward his gun. Cleef's smile didn't change. You want to see the seal? He reached into his coat slowly, pulling out a folded scrap of paper. Not a seal. A distraction. The deputy leaned in. Cleef snapped the paper into the deputy's face and slammed him into the doorframe. Ruby gasped. Cleef grabbed her wrist. Inside. Now. They burst into the telegraph office. The operator looked up. Young. Terrified. Cleef pointed his gun at the floor, not at the boy. We're not here for you. We're here to send a message. Ruby stepped forward, breathing fast. To Redstone. U.S. Marshal. The operator's hands shook. If Hatcher finds out... Cleef's voice was calm. He will. So, type fast. Ruby threw the ledger pages onto the desk and began reading names. Sheriff, judge, stage line boss, payments, dates. The operator tapped the key, sweat dripping. Outside, the street changed. It got quieter. That meant people were gathering. Cleef peeked through the blinds and saw it. Men forming a loose half-circle, rifles casual, faces empty. At their center rode a man in a black coat on a white horse, like he wanted the whole world to notice him. Baron Hatcher. He smiled at the telegraph office like he was looking at his own property. Which he was. Hatcher called out, voice smooth. Cleef. Cleef's spine went cold. Ruby turned. He knows you. Cleef didn't answer. Hatcher's smile widened. I wondered how long you'd hide from your old friends. Ruby's eyes narrowed. Old friends? Cleef's jaw tightened. I used to ride with men who worked for him. Ruby's expression hardened. So you are Red Ribbon. Cleef looked at her, guilt sharp. I was. Ruby's hand moved toward the ledger, like she might burn it, tear it. Anything to keep it out of the wrong hands. Cleef caught her wrist. Not anymore. Outside, Hatcher's voice turned pleasant. Hand her out, Cleef. Hand out the ledger, and I'll let you leave this town breathing. Cleef leaned closer to Ruby. Message sent? The operator's finger hovered. Almost. A bullet punched through the window, shattering glass. The operator screamed. Ruby ducked. Cleef fired back, forcing the men outside to step away. Hatcher's voice didn't change. You can't win. Cleef's eyes flashed. I don't need to win. I need to delay. He grabbed the telegraph roll, ripped it free, and shoved it into Ruby's hands. "Run out the back," he said. "Take the proof to the rail station. Get to Redstone." Ruby stared at him. "And you?" Cleef checked his revolver. "I'll keep their eyes on me." Ruby's voice cracked with anger. "You'll die." Cleef's mouth twitched. "Wouldn't be the first time I deserved it." Ruby hesitated, then nodded, like a woman who hated needing anyone. She ran. Cleef turned a table over his cover. Outside, Hatcher laughed softly. "Shoot the office," Hatcher ordered. "Burn it with him inside." Flames caught quick. Kerosene was everywhere. Smoke filled the room. Cleef coughed, eyes watering, but he stayed moving, firing at shadows, breaking the confidence of men who'd never been challenged. Through the back door, he glimpsed Ruby sprinting between buildings, ledger tight to her chest. 2 riders peeled off to chase her. Cleef made a decision. He emptied 2 shots into the water barrel in the alley, splitting it. Water flooded the ground, turning dust into mud. The riders slipped, cursed. It bought Ruby seconds, and seconds were everything. Cleef burst out the front door into smoke and daylight, gun raised. Men flinched, not because he was powerful, because he was unpredictable. Hatcher's smile finally thinned. "You're throwing your life away." Cleef walked forward slowly, like the street belonged to him. "No." He looked Hatcher dead in the face. "I'm taking it back." Hatcher lifted his pistol. "You don't have the nerve." Cleef stopped, not to surrender, to aim. He fired once. The bullet snapped Hatcher's pistol out of his hand, sending it spinning into the dirt. The street froze. Nobody moved. Hatcher stared at his empty hand like he couldn't believe the world could say no to him. Cleef's voice carried. "You boys still want to die for a man who burns wagons and calls it law?" A rancher lowered his rifle. Then another man. Then a deputy looked away like he'd just woken up. Hatcher's face went red with rage. "You'll regret this." Cleef didn't shoot him. He didn't need to, because a telegraph wire was faster than Hatcher's threats. In the distance, a train whistle screamed, long and sharp, Ruby's escape. Hatcher turned his head, panic flashing across his eyes for the first time. Cleef tipped his hat. "That sound?" He smiled, thin and tired. "That's your empire cracking." Hatcher lunged for another gun, and Sheriff Klein stepped out of the crowd, trembling, pistol raised at Hatcher. "Don't," Klein whispered. "Just don't." Hatcher stared at him. "Klein, you coward!" Klein's voice broke. "I'm done." Hatcher froze. Cleef didn't wait to watch the ending. He turned and walked away from the telegraph office as it burned behind him. Down the street, into the dust. Because redemption in the West wasn't a medal. It was a choice you made, while smoke filled your lungs and your past tried to pull you back by the collar. At the edge of town, Cleef mounted his horse. The sun climbed. The desert opened wide. And somewhere on the rail line, Ruby rode her truth toward Redstone. A beautiful woman with iron in her spine, carrying names that would topple a king. Cleef glanced once at the horizon. Then he rode the other way, not running, just moving forward. Because Whisper Gulch had finally heard something louder than gunfire. A message that couldn't be burned.